Back at the start of spring training, the Brewers were not in the best state, considering their literal best player was publicly calling them out because of the whole arbitration drama. To sum it up, the Brewers and ace pitcher Corbin Burnes went to court to decide how much money Burnes will be paid this year in 2023. The Brewers won the case and will be paying him less than what Burnes was asking for. Burnes was not happy, went in front of the media, and went as far as to say that his relationship with the team was definitely hurt as a result of the arbitration hearing, and it just gave everyone all the more reason to believe Corbin Burnes won't be a Brewer for much longer. No drama has really happened since, not much talk of anything, and Burnes has gone on to pitch a solid 14 innings so far this spring, striking out 11 hitters. New news has just come out, though, regarding Corbin Burnes, and it's bad news for the Brewers. Like, this basically confirms Brewers fans' worst fears. Corbin Burnes has left the agency he's been associated with for years and is now being represented by none other than Scott Boras, the man, the myth, the legend himself. For those who know about Boras, you understand how bad this situation is for the Brewers and their fans if they had any hope in keeping Corbin Burnes in a Brewer uniform for life. Scott Boras is known as one of, if not the biggest and most successful agents in not just baseball, but all of sports. He's filthy rich, has all of the best and biggest name players as his agents, and gets them all the big contracts. He's the perfect guy for players and the biggest villain to the owners. They must hate him, especially the cheap ones. Owners like Steve Cohen don't have much of an issue with Boras for obvious reason, as Cohen has no issue giving players blank checks, but the other owners? Boras is their archenemy. But again, he has that reputation for a reason. He's great at his job, and his track record shows that he can get his players a ton of money. So it's no surprise that Burnes decided to leave the agency he was just previously at in CAA Sports for Boras Corp. ESPN recently ranked Corbin Burnes as the 23rd best player in all of baseball on their top 100 list, with MLB Network ranking him at number 27. To put it simply, he's a ridiculously nasty starting pitcher, perhaps the best in baseball. I don't think that's necessarily the case right now, as I'm not completely sure, at least in my opinion, who the best pitcher is, but 2023 will definitely give us more of an idea. He won the NL Cy Young Award in 2021, and since 2020 has a 2.62 ERA at about 430 innings. His cutter is just ridiculous, strikes way more guys out than he walks, and he is in the thick of his prime, only being 28 years old. Burnes becomes a free agent after the 2024 season, so he still has 2 full seasons left with the Brewers before he officially becomes a free agent and can sign a nice fat contract. But make no mistake about it, I don't necessarily think he'll make it these next 2 years without changing uniforms. If the Brewers are somewhat out of contention, I could definitely see the team trading him. Hell, even if they're in contention. They traded Josh Hader, arguably the best closer in baseball for the last several years, in the middle of a playoff chase. They ultimately ended up missing out in the postseason last year, but they were in the mix when Hader was traded, and a lot of the players were not happy about the trade. At the end of the day, Corbin Burnes is worth a ton of money. He knows that. Scott Boras knows that. The numbers show that, and it's hard to see the Brewers coming to an agreement with Burnes on a contract extension. If Burnes reaches free agency, which is more than likely, he will be signing with another team. The time to keep Burnes if you're the Brewers is now, or at least sometime over the next year or so. But the fact that the team fought hard to prevent Burnes from making an extra $750,000 doesn't make an extension look very promising. It's just probably not going to happen, especially with Scott Boras now in the ear of Burnes. You think Boras is going to let him sign a deal now or before free agency when he can eventually take offers from 29 other teams? It's just obvious he shouldn't do that. Everything about this news is bad for Milwaukee. Is the franchise screwed forever because of this? No, of course not. Who knows what will eventually happen? And hey, say Burnes eventually leaves Milwaukee. The Brewers still have him for the time being. It's not like he's gone right now, and I believe the Brewers can be good this year in large part because of Corbin Burnes. But for any fans hoping he stays a Brewer post-2024 and for the rest of his career, I hate to break it to you, but it just probably won't happen, and probably is putting it very nicely. Scott Boras being in the mix is never a good thing for teams and fans hoping to keep their players, and that certainly doesn't change here with one of the best pitchers in baseball.